else finds you well. Yeah, I guess it's a second course in a guided drawing session for creativity that I've wanted to sort of release for a fair bit now. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I just want to say that, you know, I really want this to be enjoyable. I want you guys to have fun. I want this to really bring value to kind of like what you guys do in artwork. I think I really, you know, wanted to establish that this was kind of like, in a way, you know, going to the gym for drawing or yoga for drawing, maybe pun intended, but to set up kind of like a practice that you could, yeah, continually be like a part of and follow and kind of carry along with the kind of suggestions that I would give for life drawing. Yeah, so I would say, you know, to set the stage, you know, get yourself a tea, maybe get yourself a coffee. You know, not really sure where you are or what time it is where you are, but hopefully, you know, you're chilled out, you know, kind of like ready to draw and just kind of, yeah, get into the process. The pose length for today will be 5 minutes. And again, I just want to reiterate, as I said before, you know, like really trying to focus on the process. And this isn't about nice drawings. This is about like how you can hone in and really pay attention to kind of like how you're approaching this. Again, I just want to go over some fundamentals for those of you that maybe are already familiar with this, and those of you who are not. This is a approach to drawing. So here we have the figure here, and essentially how I would approach this is I would be looking at the figure and trying to encapsulate the figure, you know, light line in a kind of like a, you know, a shape, not necessarily a box, but it's just to help with proportions because some of these poses are very different. And then you would go through as you were beginning to draw and trying to find the landmarks that you would use. Obviously, things that would be indicative of the figure would be the, you know, hip area, if you can find it in this kind of pose. I usually tend to try to start there because that's where everything sort of is set. Also, it's good to note how large your pose is and kind of where certain elements are so that you're not drawing outside of a frame. But again, for knees, I tend to do, you know, circles, spheres, and for feet, I tend to kind of go into, say, triangular kind of approach, and it's just laying down these landmarks. Maybe the thigh here is a cylinder. And again, we're just trying to lay in these shapes so that when we begin to move into more detail, that we have a structure that is available to us that does help. So feet, I tend to go with triangles, and shoulders, you know, circles, elbows, usually essentially the same thing. And the jawline, I tend to try to find which way the face is pointing and find kind of like the structure within that. You know, and find the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. These drawings are a little bit quicker, so you really have to almost attack the drawing to make sure you're structuring it out in a way so that when you move in and begin to create more detail, that you have a good sound foundation of what you're trying to do. And obviously, this is not drawing, this is tracing. So, yeah, definitely. This is just like an example. So, I guess let's get started. I'm going to get rid of this drawing here. I'm going to use an eraser here. Just going to Oh, and just so you guys know, what I will be doing, essentially I'll be having all the tools, programs that I'm using down below in the doobly-doo, and as well reaching out to folks who might not be able to, draw on a computer. This is definitely sketchbook friendly as well. I try to keep it as low buy-in as possible because, it's about just maintaining your practice, maintaining your focus, and yeah, just trying to keep growing, keep getting better. So the first pose here is here, and I am going to start to structure this out. So I have a box. Generally, this knee is definitely a outlier to a degree because it's so far out. And we have the head here, the shoulders are here. Looks like her shoulder blades, there's like a hunch in her back, and she is pushing away the floor. I think this is actually potentially a modified crow pose. And yeah, she's balancing her weight on her arms, which requires a lot of strength here. So we have her chest here, coming here, her shoulders, coming down, arms, trying to make sure that these match up a little bit. Just trying to drop in a little bit of detail. It's a little bit warmer today where I'm drawing, so pardon me. We have the face here, the eye line. Usually I like to draw a kite to sort of drop in a little bit of structure to set the angles of the face. The nose here, the eyes are here. Mouth here. Her lips somewhat pursed. Don't want to go into too much detail in this area without buying into what else is going on in the pose. So her knee is coming down. Also, when you're drawing, it's good to look at the negative shapes in regards to where this arm is going. Looks like her hips are underneath, chest is here. This is hunching over kind of her back. So her hips are somewhere back here. Yeah, and I think the easiest thing to kind of approach is this front shin. And this foot. Can't quite structure it out the way that I want to, but again, you're looking for what is available. What shapes can you see in this foot? Comes like this. Yes. And her leg is tucking in underneath. And then, yeah, this could be somewhat of a triangle. Don't want to draw her foot too large. Looks like her thigh is here, her thigh underneath. You're always sort of gauging what you're drawing. So it's always important to look at the figure as much as possible. Dropping these fingers down here, shin, here. Close. Moving to her ears. The other one is out of sight. Then we have the head here, hairline, pardon me, and her face here. Shoulders here, bicep here. This didn't quite get everything there, but structurally most of it is available. And going to block out this pose here. And again, as we sort of go through this course, I won't be approaching every drawing the same way. I just found that for simplicity's sake, some folks that are following along might not actually know where to begin, and that can always be very daunting because to find a process in which to practice, it's like you have to start somewhere and then make the practice consistent. And through the being persistent in the process, you begin to kind of build your own understanding of how you would approach the figure. For those of you who've drawn for quite a long time, again, this could be just a suggestion for yourself in regards to a different approach. Her stomach here. She's bent over. Top here. And we have her hips here. Yeah. Looks like her knee stops just below her hips. And her thigh is in this area. Posterior. And her foot is sort of going into the distance here. And her arm, which you can't see, but you can imagine that it is through the figure at times. Draw the knuckle line for where the fingers go. I think I might have to move this hand back a little bit. So, fingers are here. Remember my first life drawing teacher used to call them sausages. Draw the sausages. Went to school. He's an odd fellow, but he's a good guy. Very, very funny. And we have the mouth here, the nose, which is a little bit above, and the eye. Just dropping in little landmarks so that I can provide more detail later on. Face here. Chin here. Then her ear lines up here. Eyebrows. So we have her hair. Coming down here. Fill in this negative space. And before we run out of time, hopefully, I didn't spend too much time structuring that stuff out. The big toe, other toes here. Drop those in. We have the wrist. We have the hand, which might be a little bit large. The fingers. Knuckle line. 3. Third one. Looks like it's bending back a little bit. So, yeah, essentially that pose. I should try to step pace here. Oh, this one's a fun one. And yeah, the flexibility involved, high level. So, as I would approach it, I think I would start at the top here. Pardon me. As we move down, she's balancing. Like this. And might come down a little bit further. I'm just going to zoom out so I have a little bit more space here, but it's always good to try to find the proper shape to frame what you're drawing. And this looks like a pose that is very, could be very precarious. So we have a sort of the gestural line here, the hips. So hopefully I don't get in trouble by getting too close to the top here. So I need to find a place to start anchoring some of this stuff, information down. Again, when you're doing poses that you're unaccustomed to, it's always a little bit precarious at the start because a lot of this can be very overwhelming, but you have to essentially find a way to break it down so that visually things begin to make sense. With the kind of pubic region here, leg coming in here, and this is definitely a lot of foreshadowing, or foreshortening. So, foot is here. Sometimes we'll run into these poses where it is like a 10. You don't know how they got into this pose, but you're charged with the attempt to draw it. And I did get into a little bit of trouble here. Definitely overshooting the boundaries a little bit. Then her other leg, which is a little bit more forgiving, comes out straight here. Then we can, represent that a little bit easier. For some of you at home, I know sometimes it's, it's always easier to draw the things that we're familiar with. But sometimes, to test yourself and have a little bit of growth involved, it is good to attempt to do things that are a little bit more challenging. We have her arm here and here. Her top is here, coming down. Her neck, arm here, her chest here. So this is starting to make a little bit more sense. I think sometimes I tend to speed through a drawing, which sometimes you should do is maybe take a moment and really investigate what you're looking at. We have the ear. All right, so that was precarious. This one's a little bit more of a closed shape drawing. Zoom back in here. See if I can marshal my placement a little bit better here. So when it comes, rises up, comes down here. So we can start with the hips shape. About here. Leg is coming down. You can see as the foot is coming up here. It's nice, maybe, want to get lost in some of the folds, but I find that nailing down the shapes underneath, it's much easier to deal with the folds and all the details once you have the baseline structure. Just like it folds back a little bit more. Her foot is right below her chest, her back, so it is very bent. Chest area here, her shoulder. Arm looks like it's coming forward. Bicep here. Shoulders a little bit small. And top. Her neck. Sometimes takes a little bit to get into tempo of what you're drawing. Find the right speed. These fingers, more so in the foreground. Again, the knuckle line. Try to articulate these fingers a little bit. I think our pinky is moving back somewhere there. And her other arm, the leg, looks like her foot is here. Her other arm, elbow. It's in the background. Her hair sort of falling down here. Hairline here. Eyebrows over here. So then you can sort of move back in, add some more kind of details here. She's wearing, looks like Flashdance socks. Here. I find sometimes it is, maybe later on we will explore some of the figures as they relate to or having costumes. Costume life drawing can be really fun. You can really get into the poses and the characters and kind of lose yourself a little bit. So that's that pose. So this one, another sort of closed shape pose. Try to find an area here. So this one looks pretty much like a triangle almost. Come along the bottom here. All we have to do is make sure that we're not overshooting some of the angles. And here are the hips. Looks like here, this kind of shape. I think her head is a little bit farther away. I think this angle is actually falls a little bit tighter to the body. Pardon me. Her foot is in here. Her shoulder is here. So move up. Back here. Shoulder here. Seems to widen as it gets closer. So sometimes my program stalls a little bit, but just got to work with what you got. Yeah. First, I think, is a little bit thinner. Her back again moves up a little bit more. So again, knuckle lines, sort of moving here. I'm not sure. I remember when I was drawing a lot in school, and I found that it was sometimes a little bit difficult to measure out the heads and just kind of measure out the drawing. And I think that it's good, but I think that when you're developing your observational skills, there's other ways that you can measure and keep things into relation by using shapes and noting the distances between them. Initially anyways. I know a lot of animators, it's very much so about the structure, the pose, the weight, the push and pull, the balance, and all of those things are extraordinarily important. But again, we will shed light on those at a later date. Here we go. Got the nose here. It's coming along. Jawline here. And her here. Comes down here. Neck. Hairline. Her bun. Should probably Probably pay a little bit more attention to that. Jaw looks about here. So these feet, a bunch of odd shapes. Looks like her arm for this hand here is here. Under. So that was that pose. So moving on to this one, which looks like it is very different. So the shape is like this, with her head down here. You see driving force up here. I feel like I'm shooting in the dark a little bit. Pelvic region, just the angle, and her chest. Is here. Foreshortened arm. She's lifting up all that weight. It's always good. I find angles are important. It's a bit hard to see her face here. It is larger in the foreground. It's hard to see her clavicles as well. So we are trying to find areas that give a good idea of kind of what's going on in this pose. It looks like it's kind of coming up like this. Leg kind of comes out. Looks like this leg comes up here. It goes down here. Ankle. We have our calf. Just here. Again, sort of maybe a soft triangle here. Toe. Our other leg coming out here. That is a very flexible leg. Yeah, it looks like it comes here. It's being held by this hand here. So we're not too far off, which is good. So this structurally here for shorts. If you sit up a little bit. And touch of ordinary. Looks like it is a little bit big, but it's okay. Belly button here. I think I'm going to learn a lot about this pose. Through the process of doing it. I think it's really good to understand your anatomy as well, because we see all these amazing superhero poses, but all those guys, they they went to school. They know, or maybe you're self-trained, but they know what they're looking at, what goes where. And it takes, dedicated time and patience and what we're doing here. Practice to sort of come to understanding, almost internalize the process by which we do things. Oh, that was a little bit of a shock. I wasn't expecting that. On to the next pose down here. This shape. All right, so shape here. Legs go down here. Looks like torso here. I find that when I'm picking reference to draw as well, it is always better to pick reference that is, I find, not twinning. There's not a lot of twinning kind of motion when it comes, or posing when it comes to the reference. I find, though it does happen, it's not always appealing. Just because you could, most programs, there's like a mirror effect where you could just mirror it over and, that's the pose. And I think that it's good that, it has its place, but I think you want to kind of develop more around building those kind of skills instead of drawing the same pose mirrored. So we have here, again, our chest area here, t-shirt, shoulder coming up, and her face. So upside down. Should we try this? Eyes, eyebrows, smiling, forehead isn't too big, hopefully not. Ears, and her hair. I think her leg might actually be a little bit short. I think her head is a little bit big too. That's okay. Can have maybe a foot back there. You can sort of adjust things, again, I might be moving a little bit quickly, but I find you have to have an understanding before you can adjust certain things. So that they sort of keep some proportion. Hair's coming down. faster pose. Arm is moving back behind here. That looks like it makes sense. Top of her shoulder blade muscles. Just a little bit of striation here. I think her bicep is a little bit smaller. All right. This pose looks familiar. So again, I'm going to draw the hips here. Sometimes if you feel like you're on, you can maybe forego kind of like the shape to a degree, but depends on if you feel really like you have an understanding of kind of what you're doing here. Pardon me, I apologize. So her hips are here, her leg coming down. So again, gauging where her knee is compared to her ankle. And her foot here. Looks like her leg is coming a little bit forward. Looks maybe slightly off balance potentially. Looking to her shoulder, she is balancing off of here. Triangle for toe knuckle line. Toes. For back here. Looks like this is arching out. And we have her hand, the fat pads of her hand, elbow, her back, her neck is coming here, her chin is here, her face is there to a degree. Her ear, hair is braided. Mouth, nose, eye. Her lip comes under. Forehead. Her head might be a little bit oblong. Her hairline. Here, her ear. There. So, some of these lines look a little bit square. Knee. I think her knee feels a little bit further up. Arm coming from underneath. Shoulder. Her other hand just reaching through to clasp onto the other one. So for ankle, for arch, coming here, toe. Looks like her other toe is. And there's a flexation going on here. Oh, this looks interesting. So on to the next pose. So I'm going to start with the bottom here. Looks like her face is here. So I think the structure for this is something like this. Heels are at her face. Looking at the back of the foot, still comes down. That is incredibly flexible. We have her elbow here. Seems like her body is just squared on the ground here. Her other elbow here. Her hands and her back is coming up like this. I do not recommend this pose at home. My goodness, that is incredible. So we have her rib cage here. We have her chest kind of here, top here, her hands up, hands are here, sort of dropping in shapes. It seems like there's a flex. It's right across. There we go, there's the angle. The side of her hips. And we have her pelvic area there, hips. Another hip is here. And her legs just arch over. This. So, hamstrings meet up with the knee. The legs are arching in. So these come like this. Her head is here. Her other leg. Her foot. Looks like her toes are meeting. Her toes under here. Toe over here. Her chin in her face. Lashes. Her hairline. Rib cage is here. Belly button. Posterior. Rib cage. Armpit here. Arm here. arms like that. Well, that was interesting. So next pose. This pose looks more like a arch. Let's see. It's always good to sit up here. Make sure that you are approaching it correctly. Just can't be dropping aimless lines at times, could get you in trouble. Head looks like it's about here. The neck, the shoulders. Looks like the arms reach across the entire pose, and looking at it now, those arms look longer. So I think it's more like this. So, just put the midline. Yes. So here we go. As we can see, back is arching. Rib cage, her chest. Her hips are here. Come sort of across here. She's resting her head in her feet. And I think the sand might be obscuring. Here. So her legs. Posterior. Hip crest is here. Have fingers. Can't see her other arm. Rolls into that, yeah. And we're moving here. Traveling over here. Yes. I think I obscured her face a little bit more than I should have. Again, not quite. stop here. I'm going to stop here. So, yeah, again, as we go through, structuring things kind of out in a fashion that you're developing an awareness to keep things within a certain frame so that your positioning of the pose is consistent. And it's important as you develop these skills, because as you develop them, doing challenging things, challenging drawings, poses, you can draw upon this experience. I will go through the rest of these poses like I did last time so that you can pause the video and carry along and do some more poses, do some more drawing on your own. That one's a nice one. That one's a tough one, yeah. A lot of foreshortening going on here, which is really nice. Nice expression. That one's another challenging one. So again, yeah, I guess that's the last one. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you learned something through this, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys again. Thanks so much, and take care.